All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our July Mentor Deep Dive with Esther de la Cruz. My name is Tegan, and I'm the Account Manager at Inspiring Rare Birds, and I will be facilitating this session for you today. I'd like to acknowledge Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and meet each day throughout Australia, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And also extend a special welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our audience today. I'm so happy to be able to welcome Rare Birds mentor Esther to discuss the importance of equipping ourselves to survive and thrive throughout periods of change in our lives and businesses. For those of you who are new to Inspiring Rare Birds community, our mission is to create, support and promote diverse and inclusive workspaces where opportunities in entrepreneurship and leadership exist equally for everyone. We are best known for our mentoring programs, but we also offer a range of educational masterclasses, and we host online and in-person events to provide people with opportunities to build their networks and grow within the Rare Birds community. If you would like to learn more about becoming involved in one way or another, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or anyone in the Rare Birds team. You can indicate your interest in being contacted through our survey responses, which will pop up towards the end of the session. So please use the chat today to introduce yourselves, comment and connect with others. There's also a Q&A tab where you can ask questions which Esther will be able to answer throughout the session today or at the end. Please also remember to fill out the survey when this pops up. It's really important for us to know what you enjoyed about today's session and also learn about what you would like to hear in the future. We take all this feedback on board. So Esther, thank you for being here and walking us through this topic at such a poignant time. I don't believe there are many people who've managed to avoid significant upheaval and change in their professional and personal lives over the past few years. So thank you for being here to help us navigate change in the future.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Tegan. I can't see you all, but hey, I see someone popping up in the chat already. But really great to be here. And thank you so much for offering up some of your time at this Wednesday afternoon to come and join me, talk about a kind of a topic that I'm really geeking out on at times, quite a bit, change resilience. And that I've really come to love exploring with all the new neuroscience that's available to us to read and learn about, as well as combining that with just the experience of change in the workplace and in our personal lives as well. So what are we going to cover today is, and as Tegan said, please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A function to ask your questions, and we'll see if we can cover off as many throughout the presentation. Otherwise, definitely we'll be able to do that at the end. So what we'll be covering today is we're going to go through becoming a bit more aware for those who are really new to some of those neuroscience facts that we've come to learn in recent years, and accepting where we are as well. So once we kind of know a bit more about our physiology and our response to change and our mindset around change, and also the behaviors that we might revert to as we go through change, we can accept kind of where we are. And from there, we can take action to hopefully become more resilient and more adaptive to change and adversity. So I wasn't actually much of a follower of Tony Robbins until at the start of this year, when I joined like an online event that he organized 4 days in a row or something. And it was like 6 a.m. in the morning here in Australia. And I thought, well, just ahead of the kids waking up or something, I'm going to join this thing online. And it was quite remarkable because it was on Zoom and there was like 1.5 million people online. And they were all doing something that I hope you will just join me in doing in a moment. But the first thing I want to explain about this remarkable statement that he uses quite a lot: change your state, change your story. So what does that mean? When we kind of go through adversity, there's a lot of uncertainty, and it causes us to really stress out about what could this mean for us? What is the outcome of this change going to be and look like? And the stress levels can also be in relation to choices we need to make, actions we need to take. And stress has an impact on our body. So that's our state. When it has an impact on our body, it's going to also have an impact on how we behave, how we act, how we respond to things. And so that's our state. But if our state can be influenced by some of our actions we take differently from what we might automatically do, then we can even change the outcome of how that change in the end will impact us. And that's what I want to explore with you today. Change our state and change, therefore, the story of how the change will unfold, how it will in the end make us more resilient and hopefully thrive through change. So it's 4 o'clock, a little after 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. So we're midway through the week. I'm sure many of you have had their ups and downs already at the start of this week. And so I'm very curious, take note for yourself for a moment and assess how you feel right in this moment. You don't have to share it on the chat, but if you do feel so inclined, then feel free to share your number on the chat. But keep it in mind, maybe even write it down for a moment, because we do want to refer back to it. So do you feel extremely tired at the moment? You're exhausted already, maybe trouble sleeping, really busy days, and a lot's going on in life and work and business and all that. So that's a 1. If you feel super energized, you're super curious and excited about being here on this webinar with us, then maybe you're like a 10. So we get some sharing here already. Okay, there's a bit of variety. Yeah, there's definitely people feeling the pinch of midweek already, maybe going through some challenges around change or otherwise. Definitely having a tough week. Wow, someone's a 10 plus. We want some of your energy, that's for sure. Cece, we want your energy. Awesome. Well, take note of your number. Feel free to share again in the chat, and we'll kind of challenge you for a moment. Now, you are lucky. I don't know if anyone can see each other. I'm not 100% sure how this works, but I can't see anyone. But I will be the geek here that will stand in front of the camera dancing, because I would love for you to explore the science experiment with me and join me for a quick little boogie. So I'm going to press this. Only 20 seconds. Throw your hands up in the air. Do whatever move you're used to doing. Nobody can see you. Dance like nobody's watching, and see how we return back after that. So 20 seconds. See you in a moment. Okay, I will stop making a fool of myself. I was inspired by that music a little bit because I've recently had the opportunity to be in Ibiza. So that's why I went for that tune. That might not be everyone's favorite. It could be anything, but I hope that you found a way. Someone's laughing. I hope that you found a way to move your body a little bit. And let's reassess that same question. Did you move your body when that tune came on? And did you rate yourself the same, or slightly lower, or maybe slightly higher? So I'd love to know if you rated yourself now lower, the same, or higher. Can you share in the chat what your findings are from that little experiment? Maybe some of you have experienced this with Tony Robbins in the past, where, oh, there you go. We have some great participation. I'm so excited. Thank you. What a good crowd. So actually, Tony Robbins does this at the start of every session, right? You may have seen this before, and he jumps around like crazy. But there's so many benefits in doing this. It actually opens our brain to learning as well. So it's a little bit strategic that I introduced this at the start. But what it also proves is that we had a little bit of influence on how we physiologically felt coming into this webinar, how we felt about our week, about our day, and about maybe life in general even, because our energy went up by just doing a little boogie. It was only 20 seconds, and there we went. So a little higher, there you go. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. So a really quick introduction into my change story. There's obviously we go through life and there's so much change. But I want to introduce my change story in the context of that awareness, becoming aware of how you feel, then what you actually do about that awareness, and then when you take action. So when 15 years ago, I decided to pack my bags, about 20 kilos in a suitcase. Back then, we were only allowed 20 kilos, which is very little. And I had one suit in my suitcase because I had this real goal of getting a corporate job in Sydney, because I'd been here once before on backpacker holiday, and I really wanted to achieve that goal of getting a corporate job in Sydney. And so I had one suit to go and apply for jobs, and I was going to stay for a year. And I was 2 weeks in, and it really started to hit me that the first bit of excitement was gone, and I started feeling super lonely and yet challenged with a lot of no's, because I was on a backpacker's holiday, backpacker's visa as well. And so it was all hitting a bit hard, like the reality of this is actually quite tough to get a foot in the door. And so I became really aware of the different emotions I was feeling and how I was starting to get a bit like in a state of like stress and freezing my activities, like not wanting to do anything. And I called my best friend and I said, this and this and this is what I'm experiencing, and this is never going to happen. And I was feeling quite low. And she reminded me of all the things that I had done in the past that would have let me and be fully equipped to actually do this adventure, but also the fact that I could enjoy the ups and downs and actually really explore this adventure and see it for what it is, like being in Sydney, this major worldwide city, and just enjoying meeting new people and testing myself in different scenarios and learning from that. And there was always the option to go back home. That option was always on the table, but I should first at least try. So I put one foot in front of the other, and I started accepting where I was. I started appreciating more about what I was experiencing and doing more fun things as well to lift my spirits. And next thing you know, 15 years later, I call Australia my home. And look, of course, there were a lot of hurdles to overcome, but just being able to talk through where I was at, take action in accordance to kind of overcoming those hurdles, and then really trying to adjust and really kind of getting better at taking the no's and pursuing those yeses, and ended up landing my first job at the RTA 5 weeks later, and the rest is history. So that's my change story. But I'm curious about what you feel currently is your biggest challenge with change right now. And I'm going to open a little poll, and it's obviously, I think it's purely anonymous, so you don't have to worry. Nobody's actually seeing any of these, seeing your name. So feel free to let us know what is your change challenge. And if it is other, if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat, please let us know. But yeah, choose one of these things that most resonates with you at the moment. Don't see any response. Do I see any responses yet? So do you feel your biggest challenge is that you're uncomfortable with a lot of uncertainty? It could be economic uncertainty, work uncertainty. Do you feel like you lose control over the situation? You don't have that control over what's happening next? Do you feel you're not as confident? When normally you know exactly what's going to happen at your work or in your business, and you're a lot more confident, but when change hits you, you're kind of really unsure if you can cope and if you can adapt and if you can maybe build the skills that you require in this new scenario. You can feel frustrated with other people, or with the struggle of it all, and you want to go back to how things were. I really don't see why the change is necessary. It could be a reason that you're not seeing clearly, like why it's beneficial at all. Maybe it's at work, in your business, or in your personal life. Why do we have to move house? Why do we have to change the system? Everything seems to work fine. Or why me even, like, why is this happening to me? Why are these relationships that I'm in not working out or not going seamlessly and perfectly? Why is that happening to me? Great, we're getting a few responses. So I'm going to go close. Well, I'll leave it open for a little bit longer. So what we're seeing the most of is feeling very uncomfortable. And that's obviously very understandable, right? Because when we lose sight of exactly what's going to happen next, it is going to make us feel a little bit stressed, because we're starting to make up stories in our minds around what could this possibly mean? What is the outcome of this? How is this going to impact me? And that causes quite a bit of discomfort. And how do we deal with that? How do we manage our mind throughout that process? Confidence can be a challenge, and definitely frustration as well with how people are managing the change, or how it's happening, or how it's being communicated, for example. Let me just have a look at the chat as well. Trying to help make change stick. Oh, yeah. Submit. So definitely trying to help make change stick. It's very hard to make people do something. You see maybe clearly what it needs to be, but then trying to get other people aboard and trying to get other people to adapt and adopt those changes as you see them fit is very hard to get to and to manage, especially if there's not enough leadership support as well. So what we want to talk about today is the 3 things we can do to take back control, because some of those things are directly related to the fact that we feel during times of adversity, during times of change, we just lose that sense of control over our own lives, over the responses of other people, over the outcome. And so we start with our physiology, which we just kind of explored already and proved to ourselves that we can actually do something so as simple as dancing and change how we feel already. Then we have our mindset, which is a lot around our belief system, things that we've experienced in the past, how we grew up, what our kind of circumstances have been that have kind of shaped our mindset. But again, if we become aware of our mindset and where it is helpful and where it is less helpful, then we can change it and we can become more resilient for change. And the last thing is action taking. So what types of behaviors do we revert to when we're in that state of stress, when we are in a state of fight, flight, or freeze from that uncertainty? What do we do? What do we revert to? I know during COVID there were many jokes about us mums grabbing a bottle of wine at the end of the day, because we've been homeschooling and we've been cleaning the house nonstop, and it's like super stressful and trying to work at the same time. So at the end of the day, the only way we could find some peace was open a bottle of wine and drink it all, right? And so in the end, that's obviously a way to reduce your stress and to feel maybe good for a moment, but it's not the healthiest of habits, and it will not make us resilient in the long term. So let's explore this from a physiological perspective. What is the hormone that gets generated in our body when we experience either one of these scenarios? Does anyone want to share in the chat which hormone or chemical our body generates when we are in either of these scenarios? I'm not getting any answers yet in the chat, but I'll reveal, and most of you will probably know it already. It is cortisol. So cortisol, there you go. There we have it. Andrew is already on top of it. So yes, cortisol is what is generated in our bodies. And you know what? Cortisol is great. And it powers us to get us to a safe space. It empowers us. It gives me that, for example, that little edge right now to present to you all as a public speaker, so to speak. But it also helps us in dangerous situations to really focus our efforts on survival, on the right things that we need to do to get out of that dangerous situation. Now, of course, these days, we don't have life-threatening situations anymore as common as we did back in the old days, where we had to constantly be on high alert to get away from life-threatening situations. That's not the case now. So now we need to be more observant about when we generate cortisol, because cortisol, if that runs through our bodies for a prolonged period of time, it means our immune system shuts down. And so, because our body is completely focused on our personal survival. And that also has an impact on how we collaborate, because we are not as able to be as open-minded to other people's perspectives, because we're really in that personal survival mode. We're not thinking as innovatively, we're not thinking as creatively, and we're probably not as patient with either ourselves, but also with others. So cortisol has, on the long term, a negative impact as well. So we need to find a way to manage that when we become aware of it. Now, one way to manage that is obviously to generate as many happy chemicals during that time as possible as well. So if we, for example, we're going through change and we are finding we're experiencing a lot of stress and frustration, then what can we do to kind of minimize that cortisol level in our bodies and not make it so prominent all the time? And these are some examples of generating one particular happy chemical. Can anyone in the chat share with me which happy chemical all of these activities have in common? And again, you can see that these 4 activities, even though they all generate a happy chemical, not all of them are as healthy options to kind of revert to. So it's about choosing those healthy options to really curb and limit that stress hormone. Yes, it could be endorphins. The running definitely generates endorphins. Ticking off something off your list. Serotonin, there's some serotonin in listening to music, for example. It is definitely dopamine. Dopamine is what all of these 4 have in common. Dopamine is it. When I'm such a sucker for making a list, and even when I've done something already, I love adding it to my list and crossing it off just to get that hit of dopamine. The other thing about dopamine is like checking your social media, checking your emails. Absolutely, running and exercise generates dopamine as well as endorphins, of course. Listening to music is also a good way. But it is about making those choices, right? On pushing yourself to do those activities that generate the right kind of happy chemicals to kind of curb that impact of your stress. So change, we've talked about it now. It leads to ambiguity, uncertainty. It causes us to fear. What will this mean for me? Will I still be able to run my business? Will I still be able to live where I want to live? Will I still have my job and be relevant in the business? Will I be able to adjust to this new system I need to use, or cope with this added volume of growth that our business is going through? And that causes anxiety, and then we start to sleep less, and that again takes away our body from generating happy chemicals, because sleep also is a good way to restore those levels of stress. So when we are in that state of stress, we're either responding by fighting it. We hear a lot about change resistance and change fatigue. We might flee the scene and just go like, this is too much for me, I'm closing the business, or I can't do this, I can't be a consultant, I can't do this, I'm going back to a permanent job. Or maybe the job that you have, you decide to leave because it's just all too much. Or you can freeze, and there's people that get really quiet sometimes during times of change and very internally focused, and you're kind of suffering in silence a bit. And none of those places are good to be for a prolonged period of time. Like I said earlier, it can have a detrimental effect on our well-being. So do we believe that we can change our response to change? Well, some of you had already mentioned endorphins. Endorphins are generated in our bodies to curb our feelings of pain. When we suffer from the pains of exercise, for example, it generates endorphins. And so that's why during exercise, you both have those surges of dopamine and endorphins. And even though during the exercise, it's painful and hard and, tough to do, and even getting to go out and run is hard to get yourself to do. But afterwards, you have that shower and you have that meal afterwards that you've really earned, it feels pretty great. So hopefully that as you experience that more, you go back for more. You make that into a habit. So it becomes a behavior first that you choose to revert to when you're in a state of stress. And then as you do that more, it becomes more of a habit. Like I've heard a story of someone who really didn't like going to the gym, but really wanted to lose weight. And what they did was they initially just put on gym tracky pants, went to the gym, drove to the gym, were at the gym, drove back home, and did that again, and did that again, and did that again, until it became habits to get into the gym pants, get to the gym, and go home again. So, and then when it becomes a habit, they stayed 5 minutes, they stayed 10 minutes, and they increased. And now they're gym junkies. They love going to the gym. It's become part of who they are and how they operate throughout the week. I see here, Shelby is saying, when stress response changes depending on my mental state too. Yeah, we're going to get to mindset in a moment as well. And these happy chemicals also help us in thinking more positively, because it reduces the stress levels, it opens up our minds to possibility, and that helps our mindset too. And we'll get there in a moment. Oxytocin is a really great example as well of which we can trigger in very small ways. Acts of kindness generate a lot of oxytocin. So acts of kindness are things we do for others where we don't actually expect anything in return. So we just want to help someone across the street, or someone has fallen over and you're helping them up, and then you see they have a graze and you sort out that they get a Band-Aid or whatever it is. Or it's someone at work who's really struggling with Excel. That was recently me, by the way, with formulas and stuff, and you're reaching out and you're just helping them sort out some formulas, and you're nothing to gain from it. But the act of kindness generates not only oxytocin in the person who gives the act of kindness, provides the act of kindness, it's also received by the person receiving the act of kindness. The great thing is it is even generating oxytocin in someone who sees the act of kindness from a distance even, or on a video. And then it is even experienced by someone who you tell the story of an act of kindness. They feel all of a sudden a surge of oxytocin and happiness because of that story. So acts of kindness are super, super powerful. Now, serotonin, we touched on that before as well, was mentioned before, is, for example, generated when you walk in the sun, you get sunshine on your face. So going for those walks in between your meetings are really important, but also having a laugh, having a good belly laugh, like finding a video you find hilarious. Maybe it's the same video over and over again, but if it triggers your laugh, it will really kind of minimize that stress at that point in time. And the next meeting you will show up to, you'll be in a different state. So it's little things we can do to kind of generate those happy chemicals. It's also like socializing. We're social animals, so even socializing with our family and friends can really generate that oxytocin as well. So what is resilience? There's so many definitions out there on the internet. It's up to us to interpret however we want to interpret resilience. In this session, we're really kind of focused on how can we limit the impact of the stress we feel by the uncertainty that change brings, and help us thrive in the face of adversity and change. And not only just once, not only for the moment, but actually achieve that in a sustained way. Like every single time we get hit with a surprise and we get hit with either a chosen or a not chosen change, that we can pull on those habits that we've learned to create and be more resilient every single time and show up and create that successful outcome for ourselves, for others, and just really kind of not feel that drain and that negativity of the uncertainty every single time. That's the idea of all of these building blocks. So mindset, and that's exactly what Shelvia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is pointing out, that your mindset, your mental state is very much impacted by stress. And our mind is, our brain is naturally wired for negative news, for negative bias, because it's trying to protect us from what could go wrong. And so that was very useful back in the old days, where there were so many life-threatening situations that could happen to us, and we just needed to preempt everything. So our brain is always active, generating all these stories in our minds about what could be possibly go wrong. So with change, that's in overdrive, because change has so much unknowns that we're filling in the blanks. We feel the need to fill in the blanks because our brain is hungry for solutions. It's hungry for making sense of things. And what it will do automatically is make sense of things initially in a negative way. So what I've seen often happen in organizations is there's a lot of buildup of change resistance, because some vocal people have shared their stories that they made up in their minds about what this change might mean, and have shared that with other people, and have found more believers of those same stories, even though the facts were actually not even available yet. They weren't even, hadn't even transpired yet. So it's a way for us to protect ourselves from what could go wrong. I also, not long ago, realized why it is that when you walk past a newsstand and there's all these newspapers on there, and you just stopped in your tracks when you see this headline of like economic downturn having an impact on our mortgages or something, and you just immediately stop and you just go and you want to buy that newspaper, or just literally stand there and read that whole article. And the reason is because we want to know everything that is, because it might impact us, and our brain wants to consume that. But what if that same newspaper on the headline said, oh, this wonderful couple just got married and is having triplets, and not that some people might think that is not the happiest of news, because that would be very challenging, but it's happy news overall, and it's people that are happy. You would walk straight past it. It wouldn't be worth your coin. It's like, oh, that's great for them. But it's because our brains are not needing that information to protect us from harm, so we're focused on that negativity. Now what we want to try and do is become aware of where we are too drawn to negativity, and we don't actually see the bigger picture of why the change is useful, why the change is necessary, why it is a good thing that these days we actually have iPhones that connect us and that collect all of our personal information, when we can just tap and go and pay with our phones, and we can easily store our passwords and things like that. There's a lot of challenges with all the digital change that we experience, but there's also a lot of usefulness, and it makes life easier as well. And so it makes us more connected overall in the world. And there are many examples like that we feel maybe quite negative about initially, but then eventually it actually is quite the positive as well. So what we want to do is become aware of how we are coping with that kind of negative bias. And that leads me to a fixed versus a growth mindset. And Carol Dweck has actually coined the growth mindset with her team. They've researched this and come up with this kind of now pretty well-known concept. And I was listening actually to Huberman Lab recently, and he was sharing a lot of research that's being done on how we even compliment ourselves and others on a task well done. Because the fixed mindset is very much related to our identity. It's how we feel, who we are. And that means that if we are faced with, for example, someone asking us a question, and we are so certain that we know the answer, we're like 99% sure, and we get it wrong. Someone in a fixed mindset state might think that I'm an idiot. They might say to themselves, I'm an idiot, I give up. I'm not doing this trivia game, I'm out, type thing. Someone with a growth mindset would be more inclined to go, oh, is that the answer? Wow. How did that come about? Or what? They're curious about where the answer comes from, or how they could have known that and better prepare for the question. Maybe they're going to ask questions. They're going to be curious. That's kind of that growth mindset, because it comes from a perspective of, if I put in the effort, I can do better next time. It's not a giving up method, like kind of idea. It's more like, it's not related to my identity. It is related to how much effort I put in. And the next time that I'm here, for example, with you guys doing this webinar, I'm better prepared and I'm more able to answer your questions. That's a growth mindset. If I was here and you were throwing me all sorts of curveballs in the chat just there, and I would just give up, it's like, oh, I'm never doing a webinar again because I'm just not good at it. That could be my fixed mindset. Now, the tricky thing there is, I once got asked, can you be in a fixed mindset as well as in a growth mindset? And it's absolutely true. All of us have both. The trick is that we want to become aware of when we are in one and it's not very useful, for example, to be in a fixed mindset and it's not actually useful, particularly when we go through change. And we need to shift our mind. We need to become more curious, and we need to open up and think about other people's perspectives so that we can collectively move forward through the change in the challenging times, rather than sit in that fixed mindset where we're like, hands up, I'm out, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm not sure I'm up for this. And that's kind of not helpful during change, of course. So that's where it kind of is good to know that we all have some of either one, and we all move between both. But it's very important to be aware of where you are at a certain point in time and how useful that is at that time as well. Now we get to the last. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Huberman Lab is great. It's a really wonderful podcast and stuff. And he articulates it also in such easy to understand terms. And so we get into this last stage, because I'm also mindful of time. I'm sure Tegan will come shortly. So this last step is really about the building blocks that you can now look at to building as behaviors that are more helpful to building your resilience and to getting to a place where you feel like you're actually thriving through change. You're like, it's not gonna throw you off your game. And so the first pillar for that is perspective. How do we view the world? What is our lens through which we view the world? Second one is, how do we process information and how do we share information with other people? And the last one is our power. What are some of the things, the capabilities that we can grow in, that we can get better at? And all of these are related to things we can do as behaviors that hopefully over time become habits, and they will just be automatically reverted to when we go through adversity. Now, explaining this in the context of building your dream home. So, for example, building your dream home is a choice you make, but man, is it stressful. And does it come with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of frustration, a lot of uncertainty? What is going to be this end product? Is it actually going to be your dream home, or are you going to live in it for 6 months and you want to get out because it didn't end up the way you wanted it? There are so many uncertainties and so much fear about making the wrong choice that it can be overwhelming and it can really cause a lot of stress. And so the way to approach it could be is that if you come from a place of gratitude, you could think of, I'm so grateful that the bank could loan us this money so that we can build our dream home. I'm so grateful there are builders out there that are equipped to build our house the way we want it. There's architects out there that have designed the way we want to design our home. There are plumbers and electricians out there that have the expertise to put in all those little things that we need in order to live comfortably in our home once it's built. So compassion is another important part as well, both to yourself, like when you're juggling work and family life, and you're making choices on your dream home, what tiles to put on, where's the bathroom going to go, and what flooring you're going to choose, and so on and so forth. And all of that needs to happen on top of your day-to-day life. Again, compassion to yourself, compassion to your partner who's going through the same thing and juggling a lot as well as compassion to those people that are working hard on site, trying to create exactly what you're intending to create. Focus is an interesting one. I mean, many people that I speak to suffer from time to time from procrastination, me included, by the way. From time to time, we all have tendency to stretch ourselves too far. We focus on too many things at once. And when you're building your dream home, you could go far ahead and already think about the rugs you want on the floor and the wallpaper you want, but you're still kind of building from the ground up. You're building walls and you don't even have a roof yet. And so at that time, your focus needs to be in the decisions that you need to make in that moment, and work with the builders and with the architect and with your partner and making the right decisions in that moment. So focus is very important. If you have too much focus on just building your home, you might not be looking after your family or yourself very well. So again, focus can go either way. You can have too little focus on the home or on your family, or too much focus, and then you're going the other way. You're losing track of your work and you're losing track of looking after yourself or your family. So focus, and the right balance in focus is something that's challenging, but it's also something we can get better at. Now, a really great thing about gratitude is that when we're in a state of gratitude, we can actually not feel fear. So that's why gratitude practices are so often promoted as a way to overcome some level of stress and anxiety, because while we are thinking in grateful terms and thinking I'm grateful for nature and a house over our heads and all that kind of stuff, we can actually not feel fear. So that's a really great way to kind of offset that. Now, the second one, processing information. Now, how important is that when you're building a home? I mean, being transparent to your builder about your choices and what you want, and to your partner, making choices together, but also simplifying things. I mean, how often do we not see change being overcomplicated? And in building a house, I'm sure there's so much jargon that we come across that can be super confusing. So communication needs to be as simple as possible, one step at a time, one question, one decision at a time, and really kind of make it more palatable so we can really adapt and face into the change effectively. Lastly, power. So these are the things that we can build and strengthen. These are all muscles we can actually work out and get stronger at. So courage, it is about stepping out of your comfort zone and maybe getting that drill and just drilling and helping out with building that staircase in the house. Stepping out of your comfort zone is what builds this courage muscle. And the more we do that in different contexts, the more resilient we become. And competence is another thing. Like in the context of building a house, you want to become a little bit more competent about understanding what it takes to have good plumbing, to understand what it means to have the right sort of connection points for your electricity, or where your toilets go, or how architecture works. Maybe you need to become a little bit more competent to make the right choices so you can build your dream home. And last but not least, adaptability. So how adaptive are we when our choice A of tiles, unfortunately, is out of stock, and we need to get a second option? And so for some of us, it really throws us off. It's like, oh my gosh, I did not get my dream tiles or my dream fishbone flooring. But this is one of those things, right? Like, the second option might just work out as fine and just as well, and in the end it will all come together. And I know that this is an example that may not apply to all of us, and definitely not to me. I haven't built my dream home yet, but who knows, one day. I thought it's a way to kind of explain it, where there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to get across that we're not naturally across. So it would cause a lot of stress and anxiety as well during this process. Now, how would you describe a resilient person? So I'd love to know that, based on all the things we've discussed, physiology, our mindsets, and also all those 8 kind of behaviors that are like muscles we can train, that we can make into our habits, our resilient habits, what would be the actions and behaviors you would see your most admired resilient person showing? So I'm going to share a poll with you, and I'd love to know what you would see the person you admire about their resilience, what they are displaying. So I've got the poll ready for you. So if you can share with me what your thoughts are, it would be awesome. So what we have here is the person who's going through so much adversity is always smiling and happy. They always seem so relaxed and confident. They seem in control of everything, and they're making all the right choices, it looks like. They're juggling so many balls, but they look like they have it all under control and not dropping any. They're super organized, calm, energized. They have a lot of energy. They can still do heaps of social things while going through everything, and they just seem to have energy for everything. And if you have an other, then please feel free to share as well in the chat function what that would be. Calm, yeah. I remember seeing those little pictures on the wall. Don't worry, stay calm, or something. Or, when stress hits you, just stay calm, just breathe. Breathing is, by the way, another great way of generating happy chemicals as well. Deep breathing, deep into your belly breathing also generates some happy chemicals and calms down those stress hormones. Fab. We have a lot of calm, which is good. Calm definitely helps, because with calm, we can actually be more present, and we can also potentially take in more information if we're calm. So that is a really good way to be if we're resilient and calm. So in closing, what we've covered is that change, either chosen or not chosen, always starts with becoming aware. Where are we? Where are we physically? Are we frozen? Are we stressed and stifled and not taking the right actions? Or, are we finding ways to kind of overcome that stress and still move forward? What's our mindset like? And what sort of behaviors are we reverting to? Becoming really aware of how we respond to change is that first step. And then how can we use our bodies to make the first step towards a better response to change? And then lastly, what are the behaviors we can choose to really repetitively do so they become the right habits, so we can become resilient all the time and revert to the right behaviors automatically all the time whenever change hits us. Now, there's a survey already popping up from Rarebirds, so feel free to click that as well. And that's my key message for you today, is like, you can choose. This is a bit of fun, of course. We don't always want to look at life through rose-colored glasses, but at times it just helps to just ease the pain a bit of the volatility of life and of the stresses of life, to just choose to look into the sun, generate those happy chemicals from being outdoors, and just be grateful for being outside and being alive and having a healthy body and persevering through whatever life throws at you. And then last but not least, I would love to invite you to take a free personal resilience assessment by registering here using this code on your phone. And I'll be in touch, and you can do your free personal resilience assessment so you become aware exactly where you are at when it comes to the right behaviors that will help you become resilient over time. Thank you. And maybe back to you, Tegan.
Thanks, Esther. I think there were some really great insights in what you had to say about change and resilience. I mean, it has been a tough couple of years for a lot of people. So, really kind of diving down into, how our mind works with different chemicals and our reactions has been really good to hear. We do have a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions for Esther, just feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll just hang here for a few minutes to see if anything comes through. Like Esther mentioned, there was a survey from Rarebirds that should have popped up on your screen. We would love to hear your feedback, and also, what sort of topics you'd like to hear in the future as well.
I see cycling is relaxing. Oh, I so agree. I come from the Netherlands, where cycling is our main mode of transport, and I love it. But it's so much harder in Sydney because you have to go up hills and stuff. So, but yes, cycling is very good, even for your mind as well, because it's kind of meditative, I think, because you're focusing so hard on cycling and making it.
My sister was in the Netherlands recently. She was doing a lot of cycling, and she may have had a tiny little accident with a taxi.
Oh no!
She's fine.
Thank goodness. Oh, we've got a question here. How best to react to emails which trigger? What are the best methods? That is a question I do get a lot. So take a moment and step back, and definitely don't respond straight away to emails that are triggering. The thing there is, I'm gonna kind of revert back to the 8 behaviors, and this one probably links mostly to compassion in the first instance. The person who is sending you that message has a lot of context. There's personal context potentially driving the tone of that message. There's a lot of potentially stress that is driving that message as well. And so in the first instance, it would be superb if you could muster up the courage to have that bit more compassion for this person and think, I'm not going to respond by fighting it, but I'm going to respond by considering that they have a lot of context. And so what you could do is either pick up the phone and have a conversation with this person and saying, this is how your email came across. Is that correct? Is that right? Is that what you meant to say? And that opens up the conversation, because either coming from a place where you're talking about your own feelings is less threatening than saying you came across that way. It's more about how you felt, because they may have not intended that. And it's often the case with emails, because we're writing in different ways we would say something. So it's very important to take a moment, consider that they're also human, and they have their own stuff going on and their own stress. And so maybe pick up the phone or have a face-to-face conversation if at all possible, and check, is it meant to come across the way you intended? Because that's how it felt to me. And then see if that opens up the conversation. If you wanted to email back, then just try and ignore this thing and just be very factual, in the sense of professional and factual in the way you respond. Thank you, Andrew. Hope you have a great evening.
All right. Well, Esther, thanks so much. We might leave it there. Thank you again for sharing your insights. And just a quick shout out, we do have all the slides in the handout section, so feel free to jump in and download them. But the recording will also be available to watch at a later date as well. So Esther, thanks again, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Tegan. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Shelvia. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, Tegan.